The only difference is personal fat threshold. That really just comes down to the number of fat cells on your body. Triglycerides are high, your glucose is high, your free fatty acids are high, and then you start storing them in the abdomen, visceral fat, where it's a sign of overfatness, and then you're diabetic. And you measure the circumference of your waist right at your belly button. That should not exceed half your height.
I would like you to explain the concept of personal fat threshold. As we mentioned, Indians are suffering from metabolic crisis and primarily skinny fat metabolic obesity. So for this, there is a highly fundamental concept of personal fat threshold. You have explained excellently in your book, and I would like you to simply explain that here also.
Got it. Now this is the primary difference between Americans and people in India. We both have a horrible diet. The diet sucks in both countries. Like the diet sucks, the protein's too low, everybody's over fat and insulin resistant and has diabetes. Pretty much the same thing. The only difference is personal fat threshold. And that really just comes down to the number of fat cells on your body. So here's how it works. Fat cells have a diameter to them, or a circumference, since it's a sphere. But when we look at them under a microscope, it looks like a circle and has a diameter. And you can do a fat biopsy on someone and literally measure the diameter of all their fat cells, or the circumference, or the volume. And your fat cell has a maximum size. So, fat cells could be anywhere from 20 microns to about 200 microns. If you do fat biopsies on a healthy, normal person, you'll see a bell curve of fat cell sizes, but the average might be 60 microns in diameter. When you do that on a diabetic person, their fat cells are maybe 120 microns in diameter on average. But each fat cell can only get a certain size, and then it'll just break. So it will never do that. The fat cell basically can't get bigger than 200 microns. So your fat cells have a maximum volume. You can shrink them down, you can expand them, but as your fat cells get bigger, you exert a pressure on your adipose tissue to generate more fat cells.
Generate more means in the number or the size of the
No, generate more as in number. Yeah, okay, yeah. Number. The cells will never get bigger than 200 microns, period, ever, no matter what. The cell just has a physical maximum size that any cell has a maximum size it can be, because it just physics of the cell membrane, it will just break. So all your fat cells have a certain size, and that's the same for everybody on Earth. But what's different is genetically how many fat cells you can create or sprout or get. It's just like muscle. So you know how some people, there's a very rigid maximum to how much muscle anyone can put on. That's very genetic. Some people have really good genetics, and they can be bodybuilders, and they eat a lot of protein, lift a lot of weights, and they end up like, Arnold Schwarzenegger or something. They just have good genetics for putting on muscle. Other people, no matter how hard they work out, there's going to be a maximum amount of muscle they will ever get. And that's literally the number of muscle cells in their muscle. You have satellite cells, so you can generate a few new muscle cells, and you can make your muscle cells bigger, but there's a very genetic maximum to how many muscle cells you can make. There's the same thing for fat cells. You have a maximum number of fat cells you can generate. The big difference between Caucasians in America and people in Southeast Asia is that we can make way more fat cells, way more. So we have this TV show called My 600 Pound Life about, bariatric surgery. And you don't see a lot of people from Southeast Asia on that show. If I put a, gun to your head and said, I will pay you $100 billion if you can reach 600 pounds, you could just, you would never do it. You couldn't do it. You physically couldn't do it, no matter what. So there is a maximum number of fat cells on your body, and there's a maximum size to all those fat cells. And that's how much fat you can ever store, period. Let's say I'm in America and I have 10 fat cells. I'm just making it really simple. and you're from Southeast Asia and you only have 3 fat cells, right? I'm going to get way fatter than you before I run out of places to store fat. So I've run out of fat storage, but I'm got 10 fat cells. So I have, more than triple the amount of fat on my body that you do. I might have a BMI of 40 or something. You have 3 fat cells, but you're going to fill them up just the same as I do. And that might happen when you're only 10 pounds over fat. You might have, a BMI of 25 and you run out of fat storage. But the same thing happens to both of us when you run out of fat storage. What happens is, first of all, your triglycerides start going up, because triglycerides is fat energy in the bloodstream that if you're super thin and all your fat cells have shrunk down, when you eat fat, the fat cells just suck it up immediately. And so your triglycerides are always very low in your bloodstream. Also, insulin's very low, because insulin is what your pancreas emits when it's trying to clear fuels out of the bloodstream. So your triglycerides are really low, your glucose is really low because that's sugar energy, your insulin's really low, everything's really low. When your fat cells are very full and they refuse more energy, there's just constantly energy in your circulation, free fatty acids, triglycerides. Then once your cells are full of fat, they start refusing glucose, then your glucose starts going up, your insulin's already been high. And then pretty soon, by the time you have diabetes, diabetes is end stage of maxing out your personal fat threshold. That's where all your cells are full of fat. They don't want any more. Now they're refusing glucose. Now your glucose is going up. And now all these energies in your bloodstream are high all the time. Your triglycerides are high, your glucose is high, your A1C is high, your free fatty acids are high. And your insulin's always high because insulin is trying to clear the fuel from the bloodstream, but it can't because none of your cells want it. They're all like, oh, no, hell no, I'm not taking any more energy. I'm already full. Like, I'm the maximum size I can be. So that is personal fat threshold. And that is why people in Southeast Asia might be super diabetic when they're just 10 pounds over fat and they look really skinny, but they just have a little bit of abdominal fat right at the belly button. It just bulges out. They have a tiny little pot belly right at the belly button. Maybe it's only a pound. I have patients from Southeast Asia who look extremely lean, but they're severely over fat and diabetic because they only have 1 fat cell in their whole body and it's full. You know what I'm saying? It's not really 1, but like maybe instead of 1 billion, instead of like the 10 billion that I've got. So that's why I have patients in America who are Caucasian who are 400 pounds and they're actually still very insulin sensitive. Their triglycerides, everything's really low. They could get 1,000 pounds. They're just getting started. But no, in Southeast Asia, you might gain 10 pounds and then you're just as fat as you will ever be. And now when you eat more, it just goes into your bloodstream and you're super, super diabetic, but you're not going to get fatter. You're done. You're maximum. That is personal fat threshold. That explains how insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome and diabetes occurs at all these different BMIs based on, race and that sort of thing. But the concept is the same for everyone. It's really just over fatness and filling up your fat cells so they're at their maximum diameter and not having the genetics for making more fat cells, just like you have the genetics for a certain amount of muscle, but you can never go above that.
I think that this absolutes everything about the BMI thing, because all the health insurance companies judge your health based upon the BMI. Are you within less than 25, then they will take that normal BMI. And I think we need better metrics to judge if someone is healthy metabolically or not. And I think we have made two easy to judge metrics, which are waist circumference and waist to height ratio. So I want you to know why these are really good indicators of a metabolic health of a person, irrespective of they are an Indian or a Caucasian, especially Indian.
Right. So BMI and weight is really not good, and it's very racist because like African Americans, they're winning, right? They have tons of muscle genetically and tons of bone, and I have African American patients who have a BMI of 30. They're not over fat at all. They're totally lean. They're totally ripped and jacked and lean, super metabolically healthy. They just have a ton of muscle, and they might effortlessly be like a bodybuilder, some sort of elite athlete with a ton of muscle and bone. Then you've got Caucasians kind of in the middle. They're like, okay, sort of average. And then you have Southeast Asia, which tends to be on the other end, where they have lower personal fat thresholds, fewer fat cells, lower amounts of muscle, and they're just their BMI. I have had people from Southeast Asia be extremely diabetic at BMIs of like 23. And so there's this crazy spectrum of BMI, and BMI is kind of useful on a giant global population scale, but it really falls apart when you look at different races and ethnicities, and it also falls apart in the individual level. But because fat storage and running out is the real problem for all of these groups, and because you store fat first in the subcutaneous cells where they're harmless, and then you start storing them in the abdomen, visceral fat, where it's a sign of overfatness. And once that fills up, then it's in your liver and your organs and your bloodstream, and then you're diabetic. But because that abdominal or visceral fat is a sign of overfatness, measuring the waist circumference at the belly button.
At the belly button, yes, because a lot of people do that at the waist.
Right, it's not your pants size. It's right at the belly button with your abdomen fully relaxed. So if you stand up and your abdomen is fully relaxed and you measure the circumference of your waist right at your belly button, that should not exceed half your height. So the ratio of your waist circumference to the belly button should not be more than half your height. It should be less than half your height. So if you're, 180 centimeters tall, you shouldn't have a waist circumference over 90 centimeters. Lower is better. And you're really just comparing how much visceral fat do you have for your height. The waist to height ratio is far better than anything else you could measure. BMI, in terms of like a body measurement, external body measurement, the waist to height ratio is the best thing we have. I absolutely love it. It's going to work in all of these different groups.
दोस्तों, ये वीडियो अगर आपको वैल्यूएबल लगा तो इसे लाइक कर अपने सारे दोस्तों से इसे शेयर कीजिएगा. इस चैनल को सब्सक्राइब तो आप कर ही लेंगे. चलिए मिलते हैं.